Hello everyone. My name is Art Russell. Welcome to my channel. The purpose of this video is to offer information to help you recognize your essential nature beyond name and form. Now, why is this so important? Because the perspective of the person is founded in duality, which means that it's very vulnerable to suffering. This is what leads to the one day good, the next day bad type of experience. And when we know ourselves at a deeper, more fundamental level, the effects of this roller coaster ride are greatly alleviated, which leads to a more peaceful and contented life experience. Now, before I share more of the information, I'd like you to know that I'm not trying to convert anyone to a certain spiritual tradition or to believe what I know to be true for me. The first information comes to us through the parable of the prodigal son, which is told in Luke chapter 15, verses 11 to 32. Now, it's important that we understand that this parable is an allegory. And an allegory is a literary device which tells a story that has a deeper symbolic meaning than that surface level story. So to get the real meaning of it, we need to dive deeper than the surface level. So today I'm going to use my phone here to help us with the story. Here it is, the parable of the lost son. And I hope, before I get into this, that you'll watch this through to the end. I've got a different take on this than many may have, and I hope it will be valuable. I'm going to put this all together, but you need to watch to the end to really understand the deeper meaning. Jesus continued, "There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one said to his father, 'Father, give me my share of the estate.' So he divided his property between them. Not long after that, the younger son got together all that he had, set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth in wild living. After he spent everything, there was a severe famine in the whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to a citizen of that country, who sent him to his fields to feed pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. When he came to his senses, he said, 'How many of my father's hired servants have food to spare, and here I am starving to death? I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants.' So he got up and went to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. The son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his servants, 'Quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.' So they began to celebrate. Meanwhile, the older son was in the field. When he came near the house, he heard music and dancing. So he called one of the servants and asked him what was going on. "Your brother has come," he replied, "and your father has killed the fattened calf because he has him back safe and sound." The older brother became angry and refused to go in. So his father went out and pleaded with him, but he answered his father, "Look, all these years I've been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours who has squandered your property with prostitutes comes home, you kill the fattened calf for him." "My son," the father said, "you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad, because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found." Now, some of the major points that I'd like to offer through my interpretation are: when the younger son goes away, that symbolizes a perspective of the person. Now, when we believe that we're the person, our focus is always outward. We believe that we, as the body and the mind, are the subject in the objective world. Subject, object. So that's rooted in duality, like I mentioned at the beginning of this video. And it leads to tremendous suffering, as the younger son experienced. Now, the point, when he came to his senses, it states, is that implying awakening to a deeper dimension of self? When he was starving, he realizes that his father's servants, and I'm wondering in brackets, those who serve and trust the infinite supplier and supply, are eating better than he is. Now, recognition that the Father, I'm saying, is consciousness, is our infinite source and supply, that everything comes from and through consciousness. The younger son, when he returned, was given the best robe, a ring, and sandals, which symbolize that he knows his divine heritage. He's dressed in finery, the finest, and he knows himself. Now, I'd like to put forth that I also believe that the older son is also prodigal or wasteful. And the parable implies this because he states, "All these years slaving for you, and I never disobeyed. You never gave me a young goat to be able to celebrate with my friends." Now, what I'm saying is that his perspective, mentally at least, was still rooted in an egotistical stance. He was envious of the younger brother. The younger brother went away physically, which implies, thought he was a separate physical person. But we also have an interior part of us, the mental. And when we think we are the mind, which is made evident by the older son, it's still not in that peaceful center of awareness or consciousness. When we rise in consciousness, that which we aren't, the body or the mind, is eclipsed by that which we are. When we give more attention to that still presence within us, that is us. Now, I know this can be challenging to understand, and to be honest, it has to be directly experienced, but I've got an illustration, a very basic one, but I'm hoping that it will be useful for pointing out how our essential nature could be non-dual, not two, but one. So here's the illustration I've drawn up for this. And as you can tell at the top, I've got consciousness. We begin with consciousness in this interpretation of reality. And as I put below this, this is an example of dream state, dream. And what I'd like to suggest is that when the mind falls asleep, when the waking state perspective, when that falls away and the mind becomes active, it splits into apparent duality. We have the subject here as the person or the character within a nighttime dream, the perspective of that. And in this, I'm making it like an ocean voyage. These are waves. Very rudimentary illustration here. But during the dream, we 100% believe that we are the person, the character, by a different name, could be a different gender, it could be anything, experiencing an apparently outer world. So the subject and the object template of the way we've been conditioned to believe that reality works. Now, what happens though when the dream ends? So the mind, consciousness, in motion is the mind. When that stops, and there's the collapse of the apparent duality. And when we awaken, or return again, merge again with the waking state, we can see that all of those, the person and the waves, the ocean, that appeared to be dualistic, were actually all made of consciousness. So there's the oneness right there. We knew the dream experience through consciousness. The ocean was made of non-localized consciousness, and the localized perspective of the person within the dream was again made of consciousness. So, practical terms, how can we know this? The easiest way that I've found is through meditation, by regular periods every day, at least initially, to turn within. And we may ask ourselves, what is it that is aware of my body, the gross body, and also the subtle body, which is thought of as the mind, the person? So the body would be the perspective of the prodigal son, that the younger one that went away physically, and the mind would be the perspective of the older son, who was still prodigal. His experience was not grounded in centeredness either. Now, I'd like to support this with a couple of Bible verses. The first is from John chapter 10, verse 30. I and the Father are one. Now, the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 28, verse 20. And surely I am with you always, even unto the end of the world. Now, we might think that verse, that surely they were joking, beyond the end of the world. But with the example of dream state dream, we know that the consciousness that gave rise to this still is. The subject, the person, the perspective of the dream character, and the ocean, they were all made of consciousness. They're still, the isness of them, of consciousness, still is. And lastly, I'd like to offer a quote from Neville Goddard from one of his books entitled The Power of Awareness. Here it is. I am is a feeling of permanent awareness. The very center of consciousness is the feeling I am. I may forget who I am, where I am, what I am, but I cannot forget that I am. The awareness of being remains, regardless of the degree of forgetfulness of who, where, or what I am. And I'm suggesting that I am is our essential nature. And that even prior to thinking I am, our essential nature is and eternally will be. If you've enjoyed this video, I invite you to subscribe, share, and like. I offer more information through my free articles at thinktwice.me and also through my book entitled This Taste of Flesh and Bones, available from Amazon. Thank you very much for listening. I look forward to seeing all of you again soon. Bye for now.